She is the chief political correspondent at The Sun, Natasha Clark. Hi, Natasha.
Hiya.
So, brilliant news. They finally got the illegal migration bill through after a series of challenges from the Lords. Let me ask you a sort of parliamentary question first. I mean, I can't quite work out what this is all about. For the last month or so, the peers in the upper chamber have been saying, no, you can't do that. We've got to amend that. You've got to do that. You must do this. Watering it down, down, down. And then yesterday, the Tory government basically said, well, no, we're not doing any of that. We hereby pass the Act and in it goes to law. What exactly is that process about?
So it's called ping pong. Essentially, we have the House of Lords there. It's funny, isn't it? It's something that we don't talk about enough, how parliamentary procedure actually works. So essentially, it's called ping pong because it goes between the Commons and the House of Lords. They essentially will put it back and forth. They'll be argued about exactly what they want to do with it. We have an upper House of Lords, the peers that are in the upper chamber, to scrutinise these laws for us. It's always been the way. There's a lot of debate about whether we should have a House of Lords, but at the moment, their job is to look at the laws and say, is this right? Shall we tweak it? Shall we change this word? Shall we put a bit in here, put a bit in there, take a bit out there? Essentially, obviously, we know that the House of Lords has many oppositions to the Rwanda plan and to the small boats bill, and in they have gone with a number of changes to this bill to try and really water down this legislation in the eyes of the government. In terms of that ping pong, it's gone back and forth between the House of Commons and the Lords a few times now. Every time the House of Lords has put amendments on, pretty much all of them have been slapped down by MPs when it comes back. They have made some changes, though, to it. The ministers have made a few concessions on detaining pregnant women and putting a time limit on that, detaining child migrants as well, putting a limit on that too. So they have bent a little bit to some of them, but I don't think it's really watered it down too much. But last night, a little bit of a shock. We weren't expecting to see quite so much action in the House of Lords in this way. MPs essentially slapped down every single one of the amendments that the Lords have put on. It then went back to the House of Lords for a late night sitting. And interestingly, the Tory peers actually came out in force. A lot of these old peers, which don't have to turn up to the House of Lords, remember, they all came out of the woodwork. The whips have clearly been implementing an extreme whipping operation, saying you guys have got to get yourself down to the House of Lords tonight to vote down this stuff. And essentially it worked. So there was no amendments that the House of Lords were able to push back through to the House of Commons. So essentially now all that needs to be done for it to become law is for the King to sign it off, and it should have royal assent in the next few days, just in time for the summer break.
Indeed, which on a basic level is good news. But what is the feeling, among people like yourself, Natasha, the political expert journalists, and indeed the MPs and the people around Westminster, about this illegal migration bill? It ostensibly gives us the right, once asylum is declined, to send migrants back. But I gather we don't have any returns deals with any countries at all, apart from Rwanda, and that's another story. So is the feeling that this illegal migration bill will in any way be effective? Will it stop the boats? Because I'm rather doubtful.
Well, obviously, this is part one of the Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats. It's definitely not part of the whole package. Obviously, the other part of the package is Rwanda, which we know at the moment is caught up in the courts. The Court of Appeal have essentially said that it might not be legal. Rishi Sunak is now taking that to the Supreme Court. Well, they will be the ultimate arbiter about whether this policy, which will send migrants to Rwanda to claim asylum there instead, as a deterrent to try and put people off making this really, really dangerous journey across the channel. Essentially, that part of the strategy is still tied up in the courts, and until that gets through, this small boats bill will have probably limited effect. It will give ministers extra powers in order to basically put a time limit. It will give them powers to detain people and to try and remove them. We do have some returns deals with other countries in terms of sending them back, but it's not quite the same deal that we are hoping to have with Rwanda. So there is a lot of doubt Obviously, we are seeing images every day now of more and more people coming to the UK on these flimsy small boats. You've seen the pictures of looking at them right now of people coming in today, some of them wearing really flimsy life jackets as well, and trying to cram as many people onto boats as possible. And yeah, ministers are seriously worried about this continuing. And obviously, as the weather gets warmer, the sea gets a little bit calmer, they are expecting those numbers to continue to increase. Rishi Sunak, in a speech just a couple of months ago, was really praising the fact that the numbers have come down. But in essence, the last few weeks numbers have really gone up again. So we're looking at about 13,000 people that have come to the UK on small boats alone this year. It's around the same number as the people that came here last year as well. And yeah, we saw the total reach about 43,000 last year. So essentially, yeah, this problem isn't going away anytime soon, and the government really do have a headache on their hands to try and sort it out.
We're going to go down to Portland in a little while in Dorset to talk to the local residents about what they feel about this massive barge, the Bibby Stockholm, docking up there. It's going to house about 509 young male migrants. So that's another story we'll cover in just a little while. But it has been pointed out. I mean, the government are making a big hoo-ha about this. Oh, look at this barge. We're going to get more barges. And then we're going to open up big asylum seeker camps. Well, the point is, Natasha, that this Bibby Stockholm, the only barge we've got at the moment, there may be more in a while, it's going to, as I say, just over 500 young male migrants. But around the country, we've got about more than 100,000 migrants waiting for their asylum applications to be processed. So this is just optics, isn't it? I mean, it's almost meaningless that they're going to put 500 people on a barge. They say, oh, it'll save money because we're spending £7 million a night on hotels for migrants. But actually, it's pretty damned expensive, this barge, because they have to spend something like £15,000 a day on mooring. It costs £20,000 a week to maintain. It is not necessarily that cheap. And it is really just a political optical illusion, isn't it? Trying to say, look, we're doing something. Look, we're doing something. But it's nothing. It is literally, pardon the pun, but it's a drop in the ocean.
I think this, for the government, is twofold. They obviously want to cut down the extortionate cost that we are spending on hotels, £7 million every day being spent housing migrants in hotels, some of which are really lovely hotels as well, which obviously are very expensive for the government, for the taxpayer to maintain. So part of it is about that cost. Another part of it is also making it look like a deterrent. Obviously, for many, many people who are fleeing, their countries and coming over here on those small boats and hearing that they are being put up in taxpayer-funded hotels, I think many, many people in the government think that is essentially a pull factor that is bringing more people to the UK. I think the hope is that making this migrant accommodation slightly more basic, with the barges, with these large-scale accommodation sites like we're going to see on the grounds of former RAF bases, that essentially making that look a little bit less desirable will hopefully act as a little bit of a deterrent and put off people from making that very dangerous journey in the first place. Obviously, like you say, until we tackle that backlog of the tens of thousands of people that are still waiting for their decisions to happen, it can't happen. But, in terms of across the country, we see MPs at every constituency now talking about having migrant hotels in their area. It's a problem that's, happens to affect so many constituencies, so many people, seeing people on their doorstep and waiting there for, days, weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even years to get an asylum decision made. So I think the British people know that something has to be done about this situation. The government are taking a multi-pronged approach to this, and I think this is just one part of the puzzle, essentially to put this Bibby Stockholm ship in place. Government have been trying to get more of these ships as well, and more of them in different areas to try and essentially build on their reserves, because essentially we've run out of hotel rooms to put all these people in the first place. It's a very tricky situation.
Yeah, with people know something's got to be done. The question is the government capable of doing anything? And it doesn't look too good at the moment.